Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whether you are a morning bird or a night owl. I'm simply glad that you are here with us on another amazing installment of the Richard Watkins Podcast. I am your humble host, Dr. Richard Watkins, and the Richard Watkins Podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network. Check out the Science Policy Action Network at span-inc.org. That is span-inc.org. Now, with that out of the way, let's get the proceedings proceeding because we have an amazing episode. You all may remember not too long ago, we had a special guest by the name of Ainsley Cisniak on our episode, and she was talking all about the Speak Out Sisterhood. I encourage each and every one of you to check out. It was an awesome conversation. But I will go ahead and tell you the Speak Out Sisterhood is an organization that is a global nonprofit focused on supporting young women in STEM. Their flagship initiative is Generation Yes, or the Generation Yes program. Yes stands for Young Empowered STEMinists, which is an 8 to 9 week remote internship and leadership development experience for college age women, in which they partner with an organization to conduct research. The Science Policy Action Network had the honor and privilege of hosting some researchers, and we have three of them with us today. Without further ado, I want to kick it off to them so that they might introduce themselves. Durga, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Durga. Currently, I'm pursuing a bachelor's in computer science engineering at Arizona State University. I have a passion for coding and animation. And currently, my recent experience is as a Speak Out Sisterhood Genius intern, where I got to do some research with the Science Action Policy Network regarding rural versus urban environments.
Amazing. Valerie, kick it to you.
My name is Valery Rivera. I am a rising junior now, studying data science and psychology at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And my research interests are definitely in the realm of women and gender equity, especially in STEM and then in their careers. And I also had the opportunity to be part of this awesome project that I'm excited to talk about today.
And live, just from just doing hard work, we got Kayleigh. Kayleigh, oh, she's got her hands full right now. Do you think you can introduce yourself really quickly?
Yes, so I'm Kayleigh Stafford. I'm a pre-med at the University of North Carolina. I'm a biology major as well as Spanish for the healthcare professions and medical anthropology. Um, my research interests are specifically endometriosis. I'm actually working with a clinical trial right now on some new drugs going on. Um, and yes, I was able to be a part of this internship, and it's or rural areas, obviously, they're my passion and being able to like expand access to certain things.
Wait, don't mute yourself. Kayleigh, what are you doing right now? For the folks who might be watching you sweat and toil, what are you doing right now?
I am feeding horses. It's my second job of the day.
Feeding horses. All right. Well, shout out to those horses right there. I'm just going to go ahead and open up. I am actually really interested in why you all chose to participate in Generation Yes. Why was this a program that you all decided to participate in? Durga, we'll start with you.
For me personally, when I saw the term woman founded and how they wanted to increase the amount of women in the STEM field, that was kind of enough to convince me to give it a shot. I didn't really know exactly what I was going into. But then after I had that first interview, I knew that, okay, this was for me because they were talking about so many different topics like rural versus urban with the Science Policy Network or trying to help pregnant women with their resources or just younger women to pursue in the STEM field. So being part of that mission just felt like a perfect fit. Anyone else?
I'll say that I have been doing research independently with the professors at UNC ever since my first semester, and that research has been mostly about gender equity in STEM, especially women in STEM, and how just learning about the history and the sociology and all the obstacles that women have had to face in order to be where we are today, and they're still not at the same place that men are. So I thought it was really interesting to see another facet of this, another way of seeing this, how it happens in rural versus urban areas. So I thought that it was just a different point of view that definitely made me learn a lot.
I, I want to stay with you really quick, Valerie, if I could. When you started this program and you started conducting research, what were some of the more surprising aspects, not about what you were researching, but the process of conducting research itself? What stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say that more than anything, realizing our internal biases while conducting research, making sure I would say like I could identify whenever I had biases, and then how that I needed to be extra conscious of that so that that doesn't reflect in my research, because research is meant to be unbiased and just presenting the facts and evidence. So definitely that. I would say also that sometimes in such a niche topic, there's not a lot of supporting evidence, so you have to resort to doing interviews and hearing it from the people who live these experiences. And then just from that, it's just also identifying what the areas that we need to further explore and maybe do a more control experiment or a more control environment that we can have those results published as well. So I would say it definitely helped me identify where the gaps were, if that makes sense.
Hey, thank you. I completely hear that. Durga, I just wanted to bounce back to you on this question your way. Um, Obviously, getting research experience is important for people who may be involved in STEM, in the sciences, in regards to their career path. But Durga, why is understanding how research conducted important for pretty much anyone to know? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it is important like how that research was conducted. It kind of comes down to like how like valid it is. Like if someone just said, "Oh, I just talked to my neighbor," and the neighbor hasn't even been in a rural area before, and then they say that's their research, that wouldn't be as valid as actually doing interviews with people living in the rural areas. So having that understanding of how it was conducted is important. Like even if you're doing like any sort of Google search of any question in general, when you do a Google search first and you click the first link, just because it's saying something, you won't really know how accurate it is because there could be so much bias because you don't know how that research was conducted. Were they using valid news articles or were they just using the first thing that they saw? So it's just kind of important, I guess, to have that background knowledge. Like from this experience in general, I kind of got a first-hand idea. Okay, so this is how research is conducted. We have to actually go break it down to the details. Like, surprisingly, more than articles, I found a lot of like data itself. For instance, seeing like spreadsheets with life expectancy. That wasn't really an article per se, but it was data. And that data, with human terms, we use it and kind of make it into research. So it's just kind of, I want to say, like a nice background knowledge to know. So at least the next time I'm reading an article, I'm thinking, where did they get that information from?
That's absolutely fascinating. And you're absolutely right. I've heard bias as a term that was popped up by both you and Valerie. And I just think that's so important because we approach every single question through our own conceived like assumptions about how the world works. And it may work that way, it may not. But for the people out there, I think one of the most interesting things about the work that you all do, and again, I know that Kayleigh is moving all around right now and she just sat down. So I'm going to bounce this question off of her. Kayleigh, could you break down the difference? Actually, how do you define rural? What does rural even mean? Kayleigh?
So for me, rural, um, At first, it was all I've ever known my entire life, but moving to what I call urban, like Chapel Hill, I would define it as like just access to resources, honestly. It was a huge culture shock when I realized like you can literally walk places to get stuff, whereas where I live, you have to at least drive 15, 20 minutes just to go to a Dollar General. We don't have any hospitals here. We don't have medical clinics. There's no specialized healthcare down here. And honestly, it's just all farmland and it's very vast. And honestly, poverty is a lot higher here, just because of the lack of resources. And yeah, I genuinely did not know urban areas existed like, or yeah, urban areas existed like Chapel Hill.
No, it's all good. And I know for the folks who are just wondering, why is Kayleigh out of breath? If you're just joining in, she was out, feeding horses. And so, again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to be here. I know you all have a lot of things going on. So I just appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us and to talk about these really important things because, as everybody just said, there's a lot of preconceived notions about the world, but specifically what is rural and what is urban. And I know from having the opportunity, Kayleigh, as you just touched on, that there's not a firm definition of rural. It generally just refers to any area of low population density. And that, as you just explained, often is associated with a lack of maybe opportunities and resources. And I know specifically, Kayleigh, you, as you just mentioned, are from a rural area within North Carolina. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it meant for you to be involved with this type of research?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It really means a lot to me that there are research opportunities like this. I kind of like I had no idea people would even look into this type of stuff, but like people as I or like my community, like it's just I don't know, it's really empowering to know that people actually care about this type of stuff. The research that we did really meant a lot to me, and I know it would mean a lot to my community members, such as the people I interviewed for some of our qualitative data. Um, like, I'm sorry, I am still out of breath. That horse feed is really
No,
heavy.
it's all good. Catch your breath. Catch your breath. Hey, listen,
But
I've never had to feed horses before, but I imagine that they eat a lot of food and therefore
they do.
carrying their lunch boxes to them for lunch has to be a heavy lift. All right, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the one of the things that people think about when they think of rural is farming. Is rural synonymous with farming? Is that what rural is all about, or is it more than that? And also, after I ask this, I'm going to bounce it over to Durga because I know there's a lot of information about how y'all's research was conducted. But talk a little bit about the role that farming, agriculture, livestock plays in the lives of individuals living in rural areas.
Okay, yeah. So I actually just drove back from Myrtle Beach last night. So I went through a lot of different urban rural places. I would not say that rural should be associated with farming and that farming should be associated with rural and vice versa. Well, I just said vice versa. Um, just because there is plenty of rural areas that are not farm dependent. However, places like where I live, we have really good irrigation. We have hills, we have rivers everywhere. We got plenty of land, just with it being a rural area. And honestly, I just think location really matters because I do know there are some like cities that have to do with farming. Um, it's just my county was built off of farming like a long time ago. So I wouldn't say it's okay to associate like farming with that. Um, I was going to say something else. I'm so sorry.
No, that
And
is
then,
perfect. I wanted to bounce off with you. Um, do you think there is a misconception that people have with rural equal, like being equivalent to farming? And when that,
absolutely.
great. So when that mistake is made, what do you think some of the consequences are from misunderstanding rural America, rural North Carolina, or even rural South Carolina?
Um, I think what comes about that is people like Valerie and Durga both mentioned bias. Like I met a lot of people at college who came from rural areas, however, they've never done this, done that, and the other. And I think a lot of times, which it really makes me mad, there's the stereotype that farmers are a lot dumber than the average population because most of my friends they dropped out of school to pursue farming, help the family. But whenever you look at all like rural country people as just like dumb, it has definitely affected my time as a scholar, and it's affected a lot of my friends as well. Um, so I feel like that's the most common like misleading part about being rural is, oh, you're just a farmer, you dropped out of school early, which even though it is the vast majority, it's definitely affected my academic career.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Durga, I want to bounce over to you. And anybody can jump in or you can tag anybody in on this question. Can you break down what your research included? How did you conduct this research and what questions did your team ask?
Okay, so I'll start it off. So our research was kind of, I would split it into two parts. The first was interviews, and the second was looking for online, actually three. Second was online articles, and third was data, like kind of raw data. So our interviews, I conducted one interview. As I'm not in the area, I could only do one who was willing to interview with me through email. And the questions that I mainly asked for were to talk about the disparities that women faced from rural environments. Then I asked, have they encountered any of these inequalities and any challenges that they faced and the differences. Then I wanted to ask, like, like a proactive question. So I asked, what do you wish were different? And is there anything you think that can fix this issue? So the main idea was that the person I interviewed was a STEM teacher. So she was talking about how, compared to their counterparts, the idea of STEM itself is more geared toward like men than it is towards women. So there are just like the differences in that itself. Like urban areas, there's more of that STEM field. There's like you have your healthcare centers, which are really nearby. And in rural areas, you have more, some of them geared towards farming or like other technical, less technical fields. So that's where more people are trained. So, what they wished that was different was that they had like a more influence on technology in rural areas itself. For the second part, in relation to articles, personally for me, I was looking for anything which was explaining like some statistics on the disparities itself. For instance, I found that in general, cost and complexity were the most commonly cited reasons for healthcare avoidance, followed by privacy concerns. So this was an article which was talking about like especially in like the rural areas
Mhm.
where there is more of that poverty, there were a lot of avoidance of healthcare just
Okay.
because of the amount of money. So things like that. So that was like articles.
Yeah.
And then third was like data, where in the previous time we talked, you had shared with us a spreadsheet with life expectancy. So that is like just one of the data that we kind of looked at to
Well, so
compare and contrast between rural and urban areas. Sorry.
No, no, that's fine. I wanted to get over to Valerie. Valerie, did you participate in any of these interviews? And if so, what was that experience just like? Not just what they told you, but what was that experience like interviewing folks?
I would say that that was the most enriching experience out of this whole process, I would say. I've had experience interviewing people because of my classes and also just some other personal projects, and I enjoyed it. But it was definitely really interesting to hear about their experiences. It was a lot of empathy that came from me, I would say, understanding it's kind of like it made me realize how fortunate we are. Like geographically, just where you live, like can be such make such a difference. So yeah, I would say that it was the most eye-opening experience of understanding, wow, this is happening, but we don't know because no one talks about it.
And so Durga was talking a little bit about what her experience was in regards to an appreciation or a value placed on STEM that she learned through her interviews. What were some of the takeaways that you gleaned in your interviews?
Yeah, some of the takeaways, for example, I interviewed a nurse from a rural area, and it was a big takeaway to learn about her experience, how the lack of transportation was like the major concern, the lack of childcare, and on top of that, also all the extra obstacles and biases that women face, especially in rural areas, because of um, the the traditional roles that women should play in their household and how they feel that they're not able to fulfill both at work and but also back home, and then how the lack of support also hinders them from reaching their goals career wise. I also interviewed another young professional who went to another university, and then after she was done she went back home because she wanted to get some experience before going to do her master's. But it was really interesting to learn about her experience, how she said, I'm just basically, it was just she was gonna be back home a little bit just to get that experience done, but after she got her master's she knew she wasn't gonna go back to the rural area because first there was no opportunity. There was no career there for her for what she wanted to do, which was like public health, I believe. And then it was another layer that was really interesting to learn about and really impactful for me was that her race. She was a Black woman who lived in a very, very rural area, and she talked about how she felt very unsafe. Um, so I just thought that that was really interesting.
Now, that is so. First of all, thank you. Right, I'm going to be a broken record because, and you all know how I feel about having the opportunity to work with you all. I'm just so grateful for you all doing this type of research, and moreover having the opportunity to be able to work with you. And on top of that, just understanding what those experiences are like. When Kayleigh was just talking, she was also just expressing what her experiences are like. And I've heard everybody say something about medical, but Valerie, this is the first time I heard anything about, hey, it's kind of hard to come back to areas after you leave. And Kayleigh, I know in some of our conversations you echoed that sentiment as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about why it may be hard for an individual who has left a rural area for opportunities to return back, not just from the standpoint of opportunities, but also that cultural dynamic, having left and come back? Talk to us a little bit about that because that's a really interesting yet complicated aspect of the dynamics between rural and urban.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, the cultural part, honestly, whenever you go out of the town, since a lot of rural areas, they have like a small town, very tight-knit community. You have your church people, and like everybody's always hanging out with the same types of people. But once you venture out of a rural area and go to an urban area, you meet so many kinds of new people, so diverse, so many types of diverse culture. Whereas, like me living in the county I live in, I only knew one culture, and that was it. So I think it's almost like a breath of fresh air to leave your rural community to go to urban so you can discover more things. And it's really hard to go back just for one. There's many reasons, but like you've learned new cultures, you've learned different types of people, you've learned how to talk to different types of people. And that's definitely something that's keeping me from returning back home. Um, and then also, I'm not sure what the name of the podcast was that I listened to, but it's a lot about medical doctors trying to come
If it's
back
not my
to.
podcast, you don't have to mention it. So I'm glad that you could not
Okay.
remember the name of it.
I have no
I'm sorry to
idea
cut
what it
you
was called.
off. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Not sponsored, y'all. Um, so they had talked about how medical doctors find it really hard to return back because of also the culture of like anti-vaxxing. That's a huge part of rural culture. I have come to find out more natural medicine, and it's really hard to be an intruder, even though you technically are from that community. You're still an outsider to them once you've left. It's honestly very similar to like a religion. If you've left and then you try to come back, you're seen as an outsider. And then also just the pay. The pay is not here. It's just, I don't know. Like you said, lack of opportunities. You're not going to get paid as much. And yeah, that's about it.
Kayleigh, can I just stick with that a little bit? Have you
Mhm.
had the opportunity to talk to folks, where you're from about the research that you've conducted? If not, why not? If so, what was the reaction?
So, I actually interviewed a lot of people from this community and told them a little bit about the research. There were a few folks who were really, really happy about it, and then they're safe to say there's some that aren't. Um, some of them I haven't told, just like even close family members, just because people around here they just don't like change. And I mean that's understandable, but the reason I haven't told them is, like I said, it's like I'm an outsider to my community at the moment. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Some of them were very thrilled, and I was very happy that they were very thrilled, especially whenever it comes to like transportation, healthcare access, and especially for women. The women were very, very happy about it.
Yeah. I got one more question. I'm going to bounce over to Durga, but
Mhm.
and I'm sorry for putting you on the hot seat. I
Okay.
apologize, but it's just so fascinating. So you mentioned that rural going to urban, and the things that come from that. But what about the flip side of it? I think one of the things that make this research so interesting, and then also you all being gracious to appear on the podcast, is it gives folks that are not from rural areas an idea from what their, fellow countrymen, experience, right? We're all part of the same state, all part of the same country, even though we might live in an urban rural area, and understanding the lifestyles and experiences of others is so very important. Do you feel that it would also be important for people who've only been in urban areas to spend actual time in rural communities? Do you, and if they did, what benefits do you think might come out of that?
Oh, this is a good question.
I only ask hard questions. The harder the
I
better.
know, I love that. You gotta make me think. Whew, I would say it depends, and let me go into that. I think a lot of people live in a what's it called? Like just their own little bubble. And those who are urban, I mean, I think it would be great for some people just to see the fact that there are other people that live differently than them, especially when like someone like myself is going to an urban area and they don't understand my background. Um, so I would say some people, I would definitely think it'd be beneficial just so they could understand like the small town living, um, the different ways of life, and just different things like that. And it is really great to, I'm connected with nature all the time. There's no cars going by me right now. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and it's nice and peaceful. Um, and yeah, just to see like even just distance between things. Like for me, my work is an hour away. I got to wake up 2 hours before I clock in. Um, and I just know that's like a culture shock to certain people. It was a culture shock when I realized people could leave 5 minutes before their clock in started. Um, and yeah, I think that would be the most important thing. Some people can understand and they can see it without having to experience it, but then there's some people who do have to see it in order to, live it.
No, I think everybody has to experience it. I think there is value in culture shock, and I think there is value. This is just me. Just I might be wrong. I'm just one person, but I think there is value in popping that bubble, getting outside of your bubble, and walking in the shoes of another person, or sometimes walking barefoot in the path
Yeah.
of another person. Durga, I want to bounce to you. I know we had conversation on this, and again, I just want to encourage everyone to jump in. I might put one of you all on the hot seat, but anybody can jump in and answer the question. But Dirk, I know one of the things that we talked about was there are different kind of rural settings, right? Rural Western North Carolina is different than rural Eastern North Carolina, and rural North Carolina might be different from rural Texas, or there's different manifestations of rural. Could you talk to me a little bit about that? And then also, I don't want to put too much on you. Again, Valerie, you can jump in and help her if you want. I can switch to gallery view. But talk to us a little bit about some of the recommendations that you all came to in regards to amelioration of some of the disparities that are experienced as far as opportunities or healthcare. Durga?
Okay. So in regards to the differences in rural areas, so I'm actually not from North Carolina. I'm in New Jersey. And I'm in like what one would call like a mid-urban area. It's not urban in the sense that like it's noisy and things are right next to each other. You do have to kind of have that like a little bit prep time, like Kayleigh mentioned. So I would call it like in the middle, right? And here, um, like let's see, a rural area is not kind of like the same as what I noticed when I researched rural North Carolina. Like for instance, when you go to like say like a Amish village or any sort of like kind of like a village type area, there are
Wait, break
people.
that down. What's an Amish village?
Oh, okay. So an
I can
Amish
add in
village.
on this as well if you need me to, Durga.
Oh, of
We have a
course.
very strong Mennonite community where I live.
I can switch to gallery view. I'm going to switch to gallery view now, so anybody can jump in whenever they want to. Durga, go ahead. Tell us what an Amish community is, or village,
So
I
in
believe.
yeah, so like essentially an Amish community, at least from my understanding from like the 1 to 2 visits I've been there, they choose to live in a way that is not very like considered modern. So they don't participate in like having a mobile phone or technology. They take pride in not having like electrical lights. Like they go for like the olden day gas lamps because they kind of believe that that's their way of life. Like there's a reason for it. It brings the community together. Like when you have all this technology and all these new urban things, it kind of separates us. It separates us as people. And those connections are not there anymore. So they choose to live as a rural area. So that's kind of like the Amish kind of like ideology, I would like to say. Um, yeah.
Uh, Kaylee, I believe you wanted to say something.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Like she just said, well, we don't have Amish, we have Mennonite. But I don't know, it's really cute. We have like they literally ride on horses and buggies where I'm from, and it's really nice because like I said, a grocery store is really far away. But come on. Like they bake like bread, they make butter and all of this stuff, and they just sell it out of their house, and it's so nice because it's like I can ride on my dirt bike over there. So, in case you forget to buy some bread or butter. Come on, spicy.
Wait,
So
Kayleigh, you have a dirt bike?
yes, I have a dirt bike.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would say that's the nicest thing about having the Mennonite community around.
So yeah, what I'm hearing is that there are different experiences that individuals have in different rural communities all across the United States, even within North Carolina. And I think that's really important. I wanted to get to some recommendations. Valery, I'm going to bounce it over to you. I know that your team put together some recommendations. Can you tell us about some of those recommendations and why you think they're important?
Yes. So some of the recommendations that we came up with, and I also want to preface that the most prominent theme in all of our investigation, all of our research was the access to healthcare. So that's where this comes from. First recommendation is to have more funding for healthcare to be more accessible, for people who live in rural areas to be able to go to uh, urgent care or healthcare place or visit the doctor and not have to drive hour and a half or 2 hours both ways or something like that. The next was also to have a lot of um basically for people to know about this. So visibility, for people to be educated on why this is important, what's happening, and how this would benefit, because without the support of the community, nothing really will ever happen. So it's really important for all the people to go to churches and explain to people why this is important and how this can actually benefit everyone. Um, and furthermore, education as well, for people to have the access to education to be able, because we thought of it as, yes, access to healthcare keeps you healthy. If you're healthy, you're able to work. And then that's the first level, right? Without health, you're not able to do anything. But also having access, because a lot of people want to work in healthcare, but they don't have the resources to do that. So being able to provide, especially women in rural areas, so being able to provide them the resources, the pathways for them to reach the career that they want to reach. Yes.
That's incredible. That is incredible. Um, so where do I go from here? Because again, broken record, it's always exciting to be able to work with you. I've worked with um, Out Sisterhood for over 3 years now, and each time it has been absolutely amazing. And your team is the first team opportunity to interview in this capacity, and it comes with it a unique burden slash privilege. On one hand, I have this privilege of talking to some of the most brilliant minds that I've ever, worked with. And in this podcast, as a podcast host, I interview amazing thought leaders in so many different industries. And what always ends up happening is that my time with you all evaporates like that. And I'm left thinking, oh, I should have asked this or I should have asked that. They probably hate me for not giving them time to talk about this. So I've started a tradition of ending every interview with the same question. Now, this is the first ever episode where I've had more than one guest. Like, I actually have a panel today. So, I'm going to do with each of you the same tradition that I do with each and every one of my guests, right? Esteemed guests. And I'm going to start with Durga, then I'm going to go to Valery, and then we'll finish off with Kayleigh. So, Durga, this is the question that everybody, so I'm going to ask it one time so everybody be thinking about it while Durga's just on the hot seat in the spotlight. Everybody else is going to have time to think about this. You can take your time. It's all good. What question should I have asked you all during this interview? And then after you explain what question I should have asked, proceed to answer it. Okay, so we'll start with Durga, then we'll go with Valery, and then we'll go with Kayleigh. Durga, you got it? She's
Yeah,
got it. All
yeah.
right, Durga, what question should I have asked?
Mm, Okay. I feel like you did such a good coverage between completely like different topics, starting from just covering rural and urban to going into the deep side of rural to explaining the disparities and our list of recommendations. Um, Maybe I would have liked a question about just my experience, specifically as someone who wasn't actually in North Carolina at all. Like, I actually jumped into this project thinking, I think they put me in the wrong project because why does it say North Carolina when I'm in New Jersey? But then as I continued my research, I just kept learning more and more about the disparities and how big of an issue it is between rural and urban areas. And the fact that why should we stop at North Carolina? Because not just North Carolina has rural and urban areas. So does America. So does India. So does so many other countries. So this is going to tie into the second question that would have been nice to have asked if we had more time, obviously, is what next steps should we take? Um, so my answer to that question would have been first we need to spread awareness, kind of similar to what Valery said in regards to the list of recommendations, but it's more of after we gain awareness, what do we do from there? By giving this awareness, we get the support for funding. And from the funding, not only we can start with healthcare. Oh, that's what I forgot. Okay. So our main project focus was actually healthcare. So I completely forgot to mention this entire podcast. So no wonder everyone, if they were confused as to what specifically we were talking about. So when we were going through rural versus urban areas, we specifically tied it down to healthcare first, through our data where we found around 75% of people felt as healthcare should be first prioritized. So the first step that we wanted to do was spread awareness about healthcare disparities in rural versus urban North Carolina. And then from there, once we get enough funding, we start working on other areas such as transportation, like was mentioned previously, childcare, things like that, specifically for women. Then from there, we realized, wait a minute, it's not just North Carolina, it's so many other places. So then, with enough support and research, we bring these resources to everywhere that's rural. I felt like I went a little bit on a tangent there, but hopefully it was understandable.
You did absolutely amazing. Especially you started off by saying, I don't think you could have asked any additional questions except for this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Durga, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you. Valery, what about you?
This made me think. But I would say the question that you could have asked is what can we do as people who are watching this podcast, as young people in college, as people who are just learning about how research works, what can we do to better understand and better bridge this gap between rural and urban areas? I think that I kind of mentioned it with some of my action plans, but knowledge is power, and educating ourselves is always going to be the first step. So I just encourage everyone to go out and do some research on your own, practice those research skills, and understand what is happening that maybe we don't see, but actually affects people in your community and beyond.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Um, Kayleigh is back hard at work. Kayleigh,
Yeah,
do you have a
okay.
moment to share with us a question that
Yes.
you wish you would have heard?
Um, so I know we talked about this in earlier meetings, talking about the life expectancy in coordination to rural and urban areas. I wanted to ask you actually if you had found any more data on that correlation.
Yeah. So I just want to
Thanks.
sum up some of the things that you all have said. And Kayleigh, that is a great wrap up question. You turned the question back on me. Fascinating. Fascinating. So, taken together what Generation Yes was able to figure out, this group who were looking specifically at disparities and differences between rural and urban, is they were able to uncover through data that was given to them that individuals that live in rural North Carolina live shorter lives than individuals who live in urban North Carolina. And that was, determined through looking at average life expectancies by county. So the counties that had a greater rural population had a shorter lifespan. And then they started looking at some of the things that individuals in rural North Carolina were actually, asking for. And it ended up being the case that, access to healthcare and opportunities were at the top of the list. And as the team mentioned, that healthcare was at the very top of the list. And so all of the recommendations, or many of the recommendations, had a lot to do with providing more access and more resources in regards to healthcare, specifically in regards to women's access to healthcare. Now, thank you so much for asking that question. One of the strongest correlations that we found that tied most closely to life expectancy was median household income. Out of the things that we looked at, and we weren't able to look at everything, but median household income was the strongest core, was the strongest factor correlated with life expectancy. So the lower your median household income was, the more likely it is that you would have a shorter life expectancy. And the higher your median household income, the longer your life expectancy was. So I believe that answers your question, Kayleigh.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. I was wondering about that and completely forgot to follow up.
No, you crushed it. Hopefully, I explained it well. I felt like I was caught flat-footed, and I was like, I was getting all tongue-tied. But basically, the more you earn, the longer you live. And that is a sad reality. I believe we tell ourselves certain things like it doesn't matter how much money you have. But when we start looking at the numbers and start making these correlations and associations, we really start to realize how important having money is. And that's a tragic reality. And Kayleigh, thank you for bringing it out. But with that being said, I want to end on a high note that the only way to make the world better is to get out there and do something about it. And Durga, Valery, Kayleigh, you didn't have to do the work that you did, but you did it. And I think that the world, North Carolina, the country is a better place just because you all are working in it. And when we think about disparities, one of the root words to disparity is despair. But the problem with that is I cannot live in despair because I have so much hope. And it is every single time I work with you that I feel that sense of hope, that no matter what the challenges, obstacles may be that face us, so long as that we are able to face them together and that I am able to operate and live in a world with individuals like you, there is hope that we will be able to make people's lives better, longer, and more fulfilling. So for that, I have to, from the bottom of my heart, say thank you so very, very, very much. Not only for being with us today on this episode of the Richard Watkins Podcast, but for the work that you all are doing as students, as community leaders. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I know that your horses feel the exact same way as I do. I am speaking for them because they cannot speak for themselves. Durga, Valery, Kayleigh, you all have been awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us on the
Yes,
podcast.
thank you.
It's been a pleasure to work with you.
The pleasure has been all mine. That is the end of our episode. Thank you for joining us to another amazing installment of the Richard Watkins Podcast. I have been your humble host, Dr. Richard Watkins. Our guests have been Durga, Valery, and Kayleigh from Generation Yes from the Speak Out Sisterhood. Remember that the Richard Watkins Podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network. Visit them at span-inc.org. That's span-inc.org. And remember that the future is not something to wait for. It is something to build. And until next time, take care.